Live streaming is on.
Okay, so uh, I'm I'll be moderating today,
Oh, great, great.
and today's discussion is on Victor Erice's "The Spirit of the Beehive." And why don't we go ahead, Vishal? Give your first impressions. What you thought about the movie film?
I was waiting to watch this film for a long time. So I watched this film for the curation. I'd heard about the first time I heard about it was from Del Toro, and for some reason I never saw it. And luckily, uh, in one of the uh, I saw the second film by Victor Erice, El Sur, during. I was not part of the curation back then, but I saw it as part of the Parallel Cinema Club curation, and was not really impressed with that film, which is a different conversation. And then for this month's curation, I saw Spirit of the Beehives, which I did not really enjoy when I started watching the film because it was recommended by Del Toro, and I was expecting a horror film. And suddenly the film started doing something to me, and I did not really understand it. It's only later on when I thought about the film and I got a couple of I got a couple of hints about what the film was, that I started thinking about it, and then it started blowing me apart. And I would say this is, in my book, this is the most important film in the curation. Uh, it's a great film about childhood, sense of wonder, loss of the sense of wonder, which I feel is as a, a philosophically evolving being that humans are. It's a very important aspect of growing up. So lovely film, just absolutely an absolute stunner, I would say.
Uh, Hello, welcome, Kavalia. Would you like to go next? Just we're going to the first impressions.
Yeah, I really find it fascinating how they started it with the Frankenstein's monster sequence, and then they connected it in the end with the Frankenstein monster. So that was really cool. And basically, that is, I do not have much to say about this movie because it was a little bit different for me, and I'm still trying to, process it.
And I think Mahesh Arya, do you want to go next? And okay, Jeff, how about you? We're going to the first impressions. Okay, so I'll just give out my first impression before we move on. I thought,
Before you go, let me read out what Nikhil has written. Nikhil has written, it is the most important film, I think, according for the curation, and it is key to understanding a lot of childhood elements. Okay, go on.
thank you. Thanks. So yeah, I thought it was a very absorbing film because primarily due to its slow pace, which we don't see at all anywhere else, as in movies. And it had some beautiful images. This young kid trying to understand the world, where cinema also plays a big influence, was really interesting to see when she doesn't know the difference between real and not real. And of course, this movie is well known for its political angle too, but we can touch upon that on a later time. um, okay. Some continuing on the thing of the images. Um, I'll give one more chance. Jeff, I think you unmuted, right? Wait, I think I found out that the director of photography was going blind during the production, and he actually ended up relying heavily on the assistants, and that made me appreciate the film a lot more, considering that it has some really strong visuals. Do you guys have anything to add to its visuals?
Uh, I I think I also heard this, that the director of photography was going blind, and as you rightly said, it makes you appreciate the kind of images that are put out. But I would say it's also the director also has a strong. He's also on top of his game, because visually even El Sur was beautifully shot. It's just that, and this film, as you said, if the DOP was going blind, the fact that this film is beautifully color coded, now you can appreciate that much more now. So that's a great insight, actually. In terms of visuals, there are so many visuals to take home, as in, uh, the moment I started understanding the film was when I read that, I was wondering, like, why is it titled Spirit of the Beehives? And my first clue, and I did not understand, it was doing something magical by the time the film got over, but I did not really understand the film. The moment I started understanding the film was when I read that beehives are, it's a life of a bee, or a beehive is a is like the perfect symbol for conditioning that we go through while growing up. That's when I started understanding the film. And the house is, the window panes, they have they are designed like beehives, and the light coming through them in the house, the light is usually, it's not usually, almost all the time, it is yellow, the color of honey. So it leaves an impact on you. And even when the mother burns the letter, the color of the fire is also yellow. So that's like beautifully connected that way. So it is beautifully shot, and it's got so many images to take home to, like, wow, like it is a fascinating piece of cinematography.
Given that you brought it up, I'll take the segue to talk about the house and the production design itself. The house itself is like, for me, it was like itself like a beehive, with the yellow colors, with the yellow light streaming through the windows, with the honeycomb pattern, the glass, and we also got weird box-like rooms that also like their own like cells for the humans, and that kind of I try to find that also kind of parallels a beehive in of itself. Given that I think the father character also tries to construct a beehive within the house. So maybe that has what do you say? Some more that adds some more weight to your interpretation of the film, Vishal.
There's one more thing that I was, and I realized it only at the end, was they kept on showing these empty. So you see a frame within a frame throughout the film. When they show the house from the inside, there will be a lot of times where you see these empty corridors, and there are like three doors at one shot. I was wondering why this recurring image in the film, about this recurring image in the film. And then I realized, at one point, she starts walking out of the farthest door, and that's when I realized that probably this is also symbolism of your conditioning, right? Wherein while growing up, you are just a free bird, and then society puts these thoughts in your mind, and it starts conditioning you, and you start getting boxed in. So then I realized, oh, this is like an image of a box within a box within a box, which was again like, wow, like beautiful visual storytelling. So the house is and the house is also, I don't know whether there is a visual symbol in it, or it's just there. There are moments, the window panes, they lit up, right, when the house is being lit up. So It's like these squares in a big, small squares in a bigger square, and or a rectangle. And I don't know whether there is some hidden meaning in it or there is some symbolism, but since it's a recurring image, there might be uh, something there. And also the beehives are also in squares, right? So that might be a connection. So there are so many things going on throughout the film, and it's very simple visual imagery, but deeply affecting.
To also add with your point about how we get, what do you say, ingrained into the beehive as we grow up. The father character is also writing something, and it's something that sticks in your mind because it's the only thing that directly kind of refers to the beehive. Says something like a society of feverish, senseless activity, and I think that would tie in well with the political tangents the film goes to, because this film was made at the towards the end of the Franco regime, which was in Spain, and this film was made in that era, and the film is set right when the era began, and
Yeah, so the film is based, I think it's at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. And so the
at
mother
the
is
end
writing to
of
someone,
the
right? So
at the end of the
according to me,
Civil
she's
War.
probably writing to a lover, right? And she's waiting for a lover probably who's gone to fight. So that is there was this one as so there are two prisoners here. One is the mother and the other is the daughter. So the daughter is losing her sense of wonder, and the mother is also in a way like losing her sense of not. There is this one, I think, last hope for her to get love in her life, but this oppressing regime is not giving her that chance. So though that is a secondary story in the film, but there is just enough out there to make an impact. I think the director made a great choice in not using that as not giving it equal weightage. In my book, that worked much more beautifully than had they given both the stories equal footage. So because her, I don't know whether it's her first image, but she's I think one of her first images is she's writing the letter, and she moves, sorry, the camera moves from a visual wherein the beehive patterned window is in the background, and then it moves towards the frontal shot of her. So that gives you a cue of what's happening. Nikhil says it's the end of the civil war. So yeah, it's during the civil war. So Franco's regime is part of the fabric of the film without ever talking about it. And that beautiful scene where she goes to the station and train station, and she walks through the smoke, and on the other side she just stands and she's looking at these random faces, and these faces also seem like, I was wondering why is he showing these random faces, and it felt like these are just faces who've gone to sleep, who've been conditioned so much or oppressed so much that they've just gone to sleep. So that's also quite beautiful. Again, when sleep reminds me, the that the kids sleep in, it keeps on coming at regular intervals, as if we are trying to show them that go to sleep, you should not be awake, go to sleep and get up as a person who's lost this sense of wonder. So that's also a good choice. It just came to my mind, I never thought about it while watching the film.
But Vishal, it could be said that the reason why this is not the, what do you say, the political context of the film was downplayed. It was to avoid censorship, and that was obviously present in the what do you say, dictatorial or autocratic regime that they had set up. And
could could be, so that might be that might be what happened. But what I'm trying to say is we only can judge a film by the end product, and it is what it is, right? And
I mean, the end product has these political statements within it. Just
exactly,
because you know it or you don't know it, I mean, that's the difference.
correct.
I mean, I
So
didn't know it when I was watching the film. I can definitely tell you
I
that.
I when I was watching Elsewhere, right, I I felt like there was I was trying to look for those underlying metaphors, but nothing. It did not really connect to me that well, and the reason was because it's an incomplete film. So the reason I was saying Elsewhere is not a great film is because the director himself said, I don't know why people have given it more credit than it deserves, because it's an incomplete film, and this is my feeling when I was watching the film. So I really don't want to judge Elsewhere at all, because it's an incomplete film. It's not a great film in my book. And I know what. So they only shot the first half, and if they had shot the second half, it probably would have become one of the greatest films because it was a lovely story. But they did not actually complete the film. So while watching Spirit of the Beehives, I could realize the political angle. But as I said, when I watched the film for the first time, it did not really connect to me because I was not able to understand those images. It's only later on when I realized what a beehive is, what it stands for. That's when the film really started getting to me. So yeah.
Um, I'd like to take this opportunity to bring up an interesting thing, an interesting term that has come up. It's called a Francoist aesthetic, where in during that time in Spain, they wanted to promote what do you say, the cultural department of culture. They wanted to promote art films because they felt that it would improve what do you say, Spain's image, and so they did fund and support these art house films. And the most courageous of them, they tended to fit these uh, critiques deep into the movie so that it doesn't get censored. And that's a big part of why at least Spirit of the Beehive is quite enigmatic and difficult to understand, whereas El Sur is quite straightforward because El Sur was made after the government collapsed.
Uh, so I am not really a big expert on Franco and the Spanish Civil War, but there's one thing that I think I read it somewhere, or maybe I'm uh, talking out of context. So pardon me, I don't really know. But apparently, even though it was a very oppressive regime, it was still a very it was not a narrow-minded society. It was quite an open social scene in Spain, uh, and that might have been one of the reasons why. As in, what I'm saying is maybe socially, even though it was a right, if I'm not wrong, it was a right wing regime, but I don't think they might be oppressive, yes, but I think they were open to art. So that is probably one of the reasons, as you said, that these films were being funded. There are two things. One is you are right, as in you can't really openly criticize the regime, and hence they had to find ways of making those statements. But on the other side, um, we have to give credit to the director who had the directorial chops to make it possible, right? So it works both ways. And yeah, I mean, I did not know, by the way. Thanks for that term. What is it called? Franco's aesthetics. That's actually
Francoist.
Francoist. That is
And a reason why I thought it was especially interesting, and you halfway brought up my point, is I like to bring into mind, Jia Zhangke and the sixth generation Chinese filmmakers. Even they make films that criticize the government, right? A little bit. but they're only allowed to criticize what the government allows them to criticize. In a way, it's like China improving its image to show, hey,
Jia,
we actually have.
that's actually a very, you brought up a great point about Jia
So
also.
yeah, so they provide this image of freedom of speech, but they don't actually have it.
It's actually a very tough. It's a tightrope, and Jia. The thing that Jia did was, at least that is my reading of what Jia did, was Jia did not really criticize the government. He actually he was kind of mirror. He was the mirror of the societal change that was going on, and hence he I think he took a call of. I'm not an expert on Jia, but the reason I'm taking up this point is because I went through this journey with Jia wherein I really had no idea what his cinema was. From there to becoming a major fan of Jia, because after watching his films, things started. I felt like there was this jigsaw which started being piecing. It started piecing together in my mind. So it's actually a great point that you brought up, Jia, because he I think he went beyond criticizing the government. One of the reasons I think he got support from the government was he was not actually directly criticizing the government. He was just mirroring. Uh, he was being this voice for this generation, which went beyond criticizing, just criticizing the government. And hence it works also. But there is, I think that's a great parallel, interesting parallel with Gia and uh, uh, forgot the name, Victor Erice. I think that's a interesting parallel.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the next topic. Do you guys have anything to bring up, like something which stuck in your mind from the film?
I think
I
the
think we've been
influence of
talking
the
Kevalia.
movie. Yeah, sorry. I was saying that the influence of the movie on the kids could also be talked about, because in a scene we see the elder daughter gets a cut in her hand, and instead of, like, we normally, if we get a cut, we usually suck the blood in. She was actually using the blood to apply makeup, which is probably something she must have seen in a movie, right? And even this girl, she the protagonist, uh, she also was influenced by the Frankenstein's monster, right? That is one of the reasons why, in the end, after, I think, she ate the mushroom and she got the hallucination of that Frankenstein's monster coming and sitting next to her. So I think that is also something that we can, talk about.
Sure, mm,
That was
like
a
I get.
great image, by the way. Like I'm great that Cavalier brought it up. I just loved that image. It was such a. I found it very enigmatic. It really stuck with me.
What are your theories regarding why Frankenstein in this movie?
Uh, I think cinema has this sense of wonder, right? Cinema has this sense of wonder where things happen on screen, and it's supposed to be a visual medium where you don't talk about it, you show it. And there is this. So if you remember, one thing that I noticed was, which I found very interesting, is in the opening when they show the film, the kids walk in with a sense of wonder, and the elders, when they walk in, the first thing that they say is, I hope it's not as boring or as bad as the previous one. So clearly, like, kids have this sense of wonder, and as you grow up you lose it. That was just right there, and I found that brilliant. So if you see, I think we just have to see what happens with the girl, wherein once she realizes that there is this loss of sense of wonder, there is no real magic here. She never talks. She never talks in the film. We have this in the end there is one line that she speaks, but she's not really talking. It's just she's thinking something. So that is this loss of sense of wonder while growing up. I think this is the major theme of the film. And with cinema also is there is a sense of wonder, right? Where Frankenstein becomes human, and he he I think I have not seen the film, and I've also not read the book, but I think he doesn't really kill the girl. It's just he's trying to figure out something. And uh, I think that there is that sort of relation in the film. I don't really know about Frankenstein to make any comment.
I mean, it's a legend, and to be honest, like the legend is more than enough. So any interpretation can fit.
I also have a theory, right? Uh, when they say that they were talking about the Frankenstein, actually Frankenstein is, by the way, the scientist, and it is the Frankenstein's monster. So while they were talking, they were saying that this doctor is so mad. He thinks this. But if even if he can answer one thing, then he could live with people calling him mad, right? So in the end, the child also realizes that she has discovered her own Frankenstein's monster. She has created her own Frankenstein's monster. I mean, I'm just throwing things up in the air, but it also makes a lot more sense, right? Because it is something that is the true, but the truth usually is ugly. But we choose to completely look over it. We try to not see in the eyes of the truth, right?
Um, Nikhil has a point. He mentions that Frankenstein seemed like a cultural choice. It was the hype of the time. Paranormal was the mainstream back in the 70s. But so I think he's regarding to the filmmaker itself, not the film in itself. I don't know.
See,
I tried.
horror as a genre, right? It's uh, so they so you we have to see at the deconstruction, the first deconstruction that happens immediately after the film. Both the sisters, when they are talking, one sister like she's filled with this sense of wonder. Oh, do people die? What happens in the end? So some sort of that sort of a question. And the other sister, she's like, "Arey, I don't. They don't really die. That's not what happens in movies." So she's on this threshold of losing of sense of wonder. And so she's on this, she's transitioning into an adult. So this that is the reason it is important. The film is there. Horror as a genre, it's like there is a ghost out there, there is a demon out there, but is he really there, or is it in our minds? So those sort of aspects are there in the film. So I don't have a definitive answer why Frankenstein and why cinema, but it's there, right? Fact versus fiction. And we lose when we lose this. Why do we love fiction so much? Why do we love art so much? There is this world which is probably not there. It's created for us, and we really enjoy it. And when we come back to the real world, it's not really that interesting. So, which is also the case with the girl, right? When she realizes that this world, the fictional world, was much more interesting, and if it's not there, then there is nothing really out there for me to hold my interest. And that's actually the real shock that she goes through. The doctor says she's gone through some sort of shock, but we never really talk about what sort of shock. He only says it's a shock, but for her the shock is she's lost her sense of wonder. So yeah, that's my bit.
Um, hmm, I don't have anything to add to that, but when I was watching the film itself, I was struggling to come up as to why the girl was obsessed with uh, Frankenstein's monster, and perhaps I think she saw herself in the little girl who played with Frankenstein, and uh, when she saw that the soldier who was shot down or who died, um, he was killed by basically the locals, right? By everyone else. And I think she wanted to be in the same place as the girl. And she also needed to die, something like that. But I don't know how, if that makes sense. Am I communicating it fine?
Yeah. That is there. She's equating the soldier with some sort being a Frankenstein's monster, right? He's also hurt. If he's so in a way he's deformed. So that's obviously there, and that's why when she sees him, she's not there. That was her world, right? That was her world away from the that was her own little world that the world did not know about. And once that person is not there, she was looking for someone and in that house, and she finally found someone, and now that person is gone. So you're right that she's looking for her own kind of Frankenstein story there.
Hi.
Hello, Nikhil. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Especially with the Frankenstein theory, I suppose I mean, when I first watched, I suppose it was mostly a cultural. It had a cultural factor there. It did not really have an internal symbolism intertwined into, at least not the Frankenstein film. But it was actually interesting to, you know, uh, think of it in a different. I mean, take a different approach in understanding it. Because from what I remember, the 70s had a huge influx of paranormal stories, uh, populating the mainstream. And I didn't suppose Spain was any different in terms of the Western influence. Anyways, it was quite interesting to know that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think this question had passed, so I wanted to make that.
No, but
Sorry.
Spain having no, I mean 70s being a time where there were a lot of horror films in the culture is fine, but then it doesn't really tell you anything about uh, it doesn't explain the themes of the film,
I mostly
so that
suppose
cannot be.
the symbolism was, uh, you know, uh, weaved into the paintings and, the overall narration of it, quite like Pan's Labyrinth, Del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
I didn't get it. How do you connect that? Sorry, matlab, probably you'll have to explain. I didn't understand.
Uh, Spirit of the Beehives and Pan's Labyrinth.
Ha.
So I found it structurally quite similar, in terms of the environment, the protagonist trying to use some kind of paranormal or uh, mystical world as an escapist strategy.
Correct. No, but I'm saying how is anyway. I also lost my train of thought. We will move forward. I forgot. I had a question. I forgot.
Um, I think it's quite interesting because this.
Sorry, you
Uh,
broke a bit. Sure.
shall I go on? Yeah. I think I try to make sense of it considering Victor Erice's other filmography also, and even in El Sur, right, the South. Uh, Cinema seems like a place of imagination for children, but where both the young women of the story they uh, find an outlet for their imagination in the cinema. But and maybe also considering other Victorious films, there is something he's always interested in. Like his main themes are like time, birth, and death, like together, birth and death together. I was trying to tie it with Frankenstein, but I have no idea, guys.
This is a good point actually. I'm not really an expert on Victor Erice, but even in Elsur, um, there is this sense of wonder with her father, with the girl's father, the lead character's father. And once she loses that sense of wonder, right, her father, for her, her father is this some sort of magician. And once she loses that sense of wonder, she also, the story, in terms of her character arc, she also becomes, she grows up, and then that loss of magic you can see in her character. So that's a good parallel in both the films.
Another thing that was, I think, both the films had a part of the kids' psychology.
Kids psychology. Sorry, did I? I don't know whether I got your point correctly.
I meant to say that because of the situation that affected their personality.
Um, it's all there, right?
You
Whose
could
personality? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
you could say like they in both the films like we'll talk about what do you say Spirit or Beehive for now. She has kind of absent parents, right? Her mother's off writing love letters, and I don't think we see the parents speak to each other. Uh, I don't think. I think there's a part where kind of searching for this story or meaning. She goes to the cinema, or maybe Frankenstein also, because she lacks uh, imagination or companions at home. Um, Perhaps simpler way to say it was she's a loner and she became obsessed with films.
I think that is the summary of everyone in TPCC. Hello.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
guys have anything more to bring up? I am.
Um, there was a brief account on um censorship, particularly, and how I think you had mentioned how G.I. Janke recommends censorship.
I had one interesting point relating to Frankenstein censorship. Shall I bring it up?
Okay. Ah, yeah, sure.
So actually, in Frankenstein, two scenes were cut out in many countries. The first scene was he's alive scene, and the second scene was when Frankenstein throws the kid into the lake. And if you notice it, that also is not there in the film. Perhaps this censorship of that scene makes the kid puzzled, and it opens up her imagination, and she tries to interpret what's going on, and she in fact asks her sister also, what does it mean? And I think perhaps it's trying to say that this kind of censorship, it leads to what do you say, uh, ambiguous meanings, because they cut the direct meaning, so and it leads to interpretation from the viewer.
I'm supposing that is what Ares was going for with the condition in Spain.
Yeah, it forms like a interesting like what do you say, meta commentary. I'm not sure if that's the right word.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, considering that she had to interpret the film from which was censored and of which some parts were cut out, we have to do kind of the same with his film also.
There is a nuance with how uh, directors or artists from a tightly controlled state would work. So they don't really produce works that criticize the government directly, but they would their works would mostly be uh, an analysis of some sort of the society or a social structure.
You look at a film like A Separation.
Hmm.
See that film, and you can see the structure of the society, the problems that come due to an oppressive regime,
Hmm.
and they never talk about the regime. There is not a single
Exactly.
line in the film about the regime, but it's all there.
Exactly.
You should watch the first film that brought Pablo Larraín into like the first film that he became famous for. This film called Tony Manero. There is not a
Hmm.
single line in that film which talks about the uh, though it was not made in oppressive times, but it was about an oppressive time. So he made Chile was under dictatorship, so he made a trilogy of films about the dictatorship. So the first film, there
Hmm.
is nothing about the dictatorship in the first film, absolutely nothing. But
Hmm.
every moment in that film talks about oppression. Every moment. It's a brilliant film. It's a brilliant film. So you um, don't, though it's not a good example because, as I said, they were not under a regime when Tony Manero came out. But these films, they will not be out there if you actually criticize the government. So you have to find a cinematic way of doing it. And no, I mean, you look at films that come out of Russia, they can't really talk about the government, but they find ways of criticizing the government, and they're always smart about it.
Interestingly, I found a similar pattern with the Indian filmmakers as well. So, although the censorship is probably not as stringent as it is in China or the Soviet Union,
It
or
wasn't. It is now.
it is now, but at the same time, you did have a significant amount of it was not really that easy going as well before, because even with Mrinal Sen, from what I've noticed, his commentaries are mostly on the class divide, and there is no direct criticism on the way the government keeps sustaining that class divide.
So when you think about it, uh, if you criticize the government directly,
It would be an act of sedition.
no, no. I mean, it could be now, but I'm generally talking about just as an artist.
Yes, that's
Criticizing the
a
government.
age-old law that is still. I mean, if it was not the case before,
No, what I'm
there
trying
were.
to say is coming back to the point that you and Kritik raised about criticizing the government
Mhm.
without talking about the government is so maybe that was their original idea, or maybe it came out due to censorship.
Mhm.
But when you think about it, criticizing the government is the easiest thing to do directly. It's you know what's wrong and you just put it out on film. But
Mhm.
to find a cinematic way is much more difficult, and it's much more interesting. So and not everyone can do it. For example, as we talk about the sixth generation filmmakers in China, why do we only talk about Jia Jhanke? The reason is he was the one who could do it like nobody else could. That is why these are great films. I'm sure there are other films criticizing the government in one way or the other in Spain. But why are we talking about A Spirit of the Beehive? Even though that's actually second layer of storytelling. It's not really the first layer is something else. So the first layer is actually it's not talking about the government, it is actually talking about society, and the government is also made up of people who come from the society. So uh, what is the question is, what is the cinematic way of telling a story? Is it directly criticizing the government, or finding when you fall when you are making a film which is cinematic, if you decide to make a film which is cinematic, you got so many tools. Now the point is, now how do you use those tools to tell a story, whether it works or not, I mean, that remains to be seen. But these filmmakers chose to make these films. Even you look at harmonic, what was the film that harmonica, right? Yesterday's film. So it
Yeah.
was it was
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
it did not criticize the government, but it did talk about capitalism.
True.
And for the regime that was in place at that time, it was a way of criticizing that government. So you need to find ways of saying things. And as Kritik rightly said, it's not an easy film to understand. Spirit of
Hmm.
I went through that journey. I did not understand it at all. It's only that I realized that something magical was happening. I could not connect with it, and I had to read up. And then I realized when I read what Beehive stands for, that is when the film started becoming clear to me. So you just have to find ways. Why they did it is also obviously an important question, but unless and until somebody actually comes out and says it, we will never know. So let's give credit to the director.
I wanted to make a tiny addition to what I was saying. Um, I mean, I'm completely with you with regarding filmmakers finding cinematic ways to tell a story. But I also wanted to think about how, either parallelly or in contrast, with countries, Western countries that have a very strong sense of individualism. They have these. I mean, they are pretty confident with the way they critique politicians, or they hold the freedom of speech right, the fundamental right, with the utmost importance in the society. So, I mean, a few examples that I can think of right now is the Post or Lincoln. I mean, they weren't really critiques, but you had a protagonist and an antagonist in some way representing the political parties. And also, I suppose Yes Minister, the TV show, is a really good parody. And I feel the satirical works are in some sense lacking. And if there are countries that can indulge, I mean, the filmmakers of that country, they can indulge in uh, satires, works of satire. I suppose they should do so.
Hello, 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 hello.
I think we lost Nikhil. Yeah, he's gone.
Don't say we lost Nikhil.
I mean to say connection. We lost connection to Nikhil.
Was
Um,
I on the?
yeah, we couldn't hear you for a
We thought
while.
we lost you.
Okay, I spoke for 3 minutes. Okay, but so where
You
did
were
I
saying
cut off?
that I think you were saying, I guess we lost you at the point where we were saying that satire works.
Yeah, so if I feel satires and parodies, I hold them as the pinnacle of least censorship, But I mean, this is a very tangential point to the original discussion, so Kritik can decide if this particular sub conversation can go forward or not.
Nikhil, I can't believe you're putting me in a spot like this.
The
I
perks
mean,
of being a
you can go ahead with your point. If anyone has anything to add, they can
I mean,
go.
that was,
They can add.
I mean, that is
That
what
was
I
it.
wanted to add to the point I was making, and I completely agree with Vishal. Even Naderi, for that matter, used to, imprint his political views on the children that he cast in his films. So that is a very interesting point. And even with harmonica, the same with his other films, The Runner or uh, ABC Manhattan. Although there is a universal element of solitude in the main character, he had the you know he used to include the political influence because he knew it was inescapable in some degree. And was it a matter of consequence or personal artistic choice? I think that is definitely debatable. But uh, I also wanted to, I also wanted to look at works of satire. But again, this is tangential, so if you guys want to say anything about it, please feel free.
See, my point is very simple. For example, a film like A Magnificent Ambersons.
Uh-huh.
I find it very difficult to judge that film because I don't. I mean, visually there are points where you can make out where the director was overrided and the studio took over. But there are moments of genius in that film. But when the studio takes over, it's a very average film. So how do you judge that film, right? So similarly, when how do we make that judgment? What works and what doesn't work? The proof of the pudding is in its eating. We see those films, and that's how you judge them. We have all sort of uh, freedoms in India, but are we really making those world class films? Not really. So uh, the question is important, as in I like the question, but how do we answer it? I don't really know how do we answer it.
Um, I don't have anything to add, but I have one question to ask, and I think this especially goes to Vishal. Do you think? I mean, it's quite clear that you like this film as its own story, but for me, this movie doesn't have much meaning without its cultural context. You know, I think it's one of those films that's trapped in the nation it's made in. What do you guys have to say about that? Vishal, you can go ahead.
No, but I don't agree with it because as maybe I realized it when I had grown up. If I have grown up, I don't know whether I've grown up, but I realized it as in and I feel that we once the day children start understanding. So I have a niece, and I look at her. She doesn't really understand things, and she does her own thing. And whenever I see her, I think about the fact that in a couple of years, she'll be mindful of a few things, which she doesn't have to be. It's a simple thing, as in, it's a very simple thing wherein girls just can't spread their legs and sit, you know. So even if they're wearing full length clothes, they just can't spread their legs and sit. Why? So that's a sort of conditioning, right? And you may agree with me or don't agree with me, but it's just because men tend to look at them in a way which is one should not. But that's a problem with men, not women. So this sense of loss of wonder. This is not the spreading of legs is not the sense of wonder, but the world is so full of magic, and once we start understanding the world, it's a different place to be in, and not really better than the world that we thought it would be. So for me, that is that's universal. It's not cultural at all. And in terms of, even if you take away Franco, all regimes are oppressive in their own ways. For me, at least, that's how I look at regimes. They are oppressive in their own ways. You look at America, for example, they give you the most amount of freedom, but when you think about it, they are the most inhumane regime in the world because of the amount of atrocities that they have unleashed on different parts of the world. So how do you judge that, right? And so for me, the film stands above its cultural context. If it, because it never talks about Franco, it just talks about a regime. So I wouldn't say that the film doesn't is I in my view it is not trapped in its cultural uh, whatever the word for it is. I mean, in its cultural context, I personally don't think that's the case.
For me, again, I the whole thing about the operation and the political thing, I didn't really picked it up. I mean, I knew that there is something going on, there is a war-like situation, and something is happening because of those letters. But apart from that, I didn't actually picked up on the this part of the thing. And yet, for some reason, I was really drawn into this movie. So I think that saying that it is dependent on what you are saying, that it's dependent on the cultural aspect or stuff like that. I do not think that is true. It is more of a kid who is very young, who is open to everything in the world and is exploring the world, and is suddenly exposed to something which usually you do not expect a kid to be exposed at a young age, and then it's after effect on the kid. I think that is what the movie is more about. You know, like I think while the curation during the curation also he told, I think Nikhil had told that a child's movie is usually a joy to watch until the child loses his innocence, and then it becomes a very somber tale. So that is what happened in my opinion, right? With the kid was never supposed to be playing or taking care of that soldier or something like that. But she was trying to explore the world. She found someone. She found her own Frankenstein's monster. She was taking care of her. And then suddenly one day that monster has disappeared. And the one meaning that she had achieved in such a young age, at such a young age. Oh, I'm going to take care of it. It was like she had a pet, and then suddenly her pet died. And now obviously they could have shown it with pet also, but I think it's over here that they played with the human being, and human life has more impact than animals' life for normal audience. Not for kids. For kids, pets and humans both are same living creatures. But for adults, usually they prefer human life over animals. So I think that is one of the reason why they took this part. And again, and then there was again they wanted to probably mix the political part, which you people then picked up and uh, 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 you know brought in front of me. So yeah, but I think the concept was very similar, that yeah, a kid is exploring, and then it encounters something. It is very meaningful, and then suddenly something that is very meaningful to the kid is taken away from the kid, which is something that usually happens as you grow up. You find something of importance, and then it is taken away from you, or it gets lost. Something happens, and then you have to deal with it. But the kid was not ready for it, and then thing happened with the kid. I think that
One,
is the story for my.
um, I mean, from Kaivalya's point, I feel like there must be some sort of intertwining of symbolism with the Frankenstein monster. I mean, I was initially wrong with simply assuming, because although it's a cultural, although it had a cultural impact, it also had a very significant. It probably played a very strong symbolic role in the film as well. And additionally, um, as not as a counterpoint to Kaivalya, but you can consider it to be in addition to it. Uh, from what I understand, directors mostly employ children in uh, in uh, in films. I mean, to reflect the political environment, mostly because they have a strong sense of association with the ideology. As we grow up, we begin to look at the policies of it, and we either move away from it or just come to terms with it. But with a child, the ideology and the conviction is very pure, and uh, I think that is what we come to notice with a lot of films that deal with children. Even with Where Is My Friend's House, it seems like a very small. The plot seems very loose, uh, in the terms that it did not really start out with a plot, but it was mostly a commentary on how hypocritical uh, you know the the adults were in the film.
I think for me, Cavalier has given the right term for. I'll try and use it to explain what I feel. When he says that she found her own Frankenstein's monster, I think what that's the line that Cavalier used, and I think that's very apt because when you watch a horror film, what are you taught? We are taught to be scared of monsters, but Frankenstein, he's not really a monster to be scared of. So I mean, the that's I think that's the story, if I'm not wrong. So if she's found her own monster and the world is just teaching her to be scared of the monster, but she's actually not scared of the monster. She wants her own monster, and when that monster goes missing, she loses all interest in life. So I think that term, she found her own Frankenstein's monster, is I think very apt. I think that's a good way of getting to the core of the film. That's a good path to get to the core. I think, nice. That's nice.
Oh yeah, that's. I have to agree with Vishal. That was a great way to, uh, a great line to express the emotional core of the film. Uh, um, I don't have anything else more to add, guys. I have. We can maybe continue with a little bit more on Victor Erice's filmography if you want. But before that, if you guys have anything else to add about Spirit of the Beehive.
I think I probably have said. Oh, wow, wow, I think the one scene that we probably should discuss, or I don't know whether we should discuss, but what I found it more fascinating when I saw it again was the scene where, and symbolically it explains everything, right? Where the scene where in the school they are taught about the human anatomy, and it ends with the eyes, and she's the one who's putting those eyes on the model. So that's probably the. It's a very interesting tool to explain what the story is all about. And I really enjoyed that scene. I enjoyed that section of the film.
If I may ask, what do you think it meant?
I
Did we
found
also
maybe
talk about?
so when you
Sorry.
when you see that scene, it starts with tables. Tables are maths. Like it's very easy. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. That's it. Like that's what life is. This is what you see. This is what you know. Everything can be figured out. Everything can be counted. But when they start talking about the human body, and she talk, so this it's all about seeing the world around her, and with conditioning, we see the world according to the way society wants us to see the world. So eyes are very important in that when we talk about that. So that's why she's the one who's putting those eyes on the model, because that is her connection. That is she's our connection to the core of the film, and her putting eyes on that model uh, is a way of making that connection.
Kill, you were saying something? Hello, guys. Am I audible?
I think we've lost Nikhil again.
Again. Yeah, but talking like that, like it's there are numerous places in the movie that it's quite difficult to figure out why it is there. Like the whole mushroom scene, and also
That's a good point. The mushroom.
and also
I'm also wondering why was it there?
I think the
uh,
mushroom plays the part in the ending. No, if you see in the climax when the girl is running in the dark, she sees a mushroom and
Yeah,
she
but
most
what is the
likely
connection?
consumed it. No, I'm saying she most likely consumed it in order to end her misery, or because she's lost something. Like she took a leap of faith, and then she had a hallucination, and because of that, she
That is
saw
it.
her Frankenstein's monster. That is what I came
No,
from.
no, no. It's a very interesting thought. No, it's totally possible. Very interesting. Because I was thinking, if you think about conditioning, right? Simply, if you think about conditioning, the father tells them, "This is poisonous. Don't use it," and he crushes it. Okay, so this is what is being told to you by the elders, and we have to follow it. But if it is poisonous, it is poisonous, right? There is no conditioning about that particular aspect. So I was wondering what he was trying to say. But if it's an hallucinogenic, that is actually very interesting theory. Maybe when I see it again, I might see it with those eyes. Very nice.
Because
Interesting.
that is the first thing that came to my mind. Like suddenly she's watching Frankenstein's monster, right? I don't know why. It just connected with me for some weird reason.
No, no, it's for. I mean, I think it's very interesting.
yeah, even that's a good point. Actually, I didn't understand why the mushroom. There's like a brief cutaway to the mushroom towards the end. I didn't connect that also, and I think that makes a little bit more sense now. And one scene which for some reason I really like was just the whole. I don't know how long was it, like maybe 2 minutes or more, maybe less. There was a scene where she's pretending to sleep while the husband comes to sleep, and I think I really like that scene. I don't know why. It's
No,
just
no, yes, I agree. Because even when I saw it again, that's when I was wondering what's happening, and then when it connected, it made sense. Yeah, I agree. That was also a good scene. Very nice.
yeah, I think there's that very interesting quality in some filmmakers. They just stop everything for a moment and they just literally hold on a character doing almost nothing.
I think when I see the film again, I will concentrate on the uh, opening credits, um, because these are painting drawings by kids, right? But they are trying to tell something. So maybe when I see it again, that is, I think, something that I will concentrate on. Maybe try to figure out whether there's something being told through those credits.
I would also suggest you to listen to this the epilogue that is happening about the scientist Frankenstein. Because they that is where I got the idea that maybe this girl, like everyone is saying that that scientist wants to become god, right? He wants to do something which is not, and he's going to be called mad. But the scientist is, but even if I find some one particular thing, then i'm I would be really happy to be called mad for my entire life. And that is exactly what is going to happen with the girl now, right? She is going to be called mad for her entire life, but she has found something. Like it's not really that concrete, but it does makes some sense in that
Yes,
way.
yes, it makes sense because my theory is, in my theory in life generally is, I might take a decision and I might destroy my own life. But it's okay if I destroy my own life. I don't want you to tell me something and I follow that and I destroy my life. So I think people, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail, but it's your failure. So that's a good point that Kevin has brought up. No, it's okay to be mad. At least I can own my madness. But I don't want to be mad just because you said I'm mad. So yeah, That makes sense. I think we should wrap it up now because
Okay, yeah, sure.
as you
Because
said
I
about
think
Victor Erice, I think we've covered about Victor Erice and we talked about El Sur, which I personally don't think is a great film. And
even I'm not a big fan of it, but
we,
I'm
when
a
it
huge.
was part of the curation, there was this very strong argument that it's a great film, and I said it's not. And because the director himself said, he said, I don't know why, I think the film has got too much praise. And he said, it's an incomplete film, which was my first reaction. I was like, it's not a complete film. There is something missing. And when I found that interview, he said, it's an incomplete film. There is no point in giving it so much praise, which I agree. And I mean, what was happening on screen was quite lovely to watch, but there was something missing in that. But this film was like, wow. So I think we've talked about Victor Hayes. He made one more documentary, but I've not seen it.
Yeah, I would even. I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of Elsor, but I really like the documentary he has made. And that was the first thing by him which I seen. I just randomly watched it on YouTube, and it was an experience watching that. It's really good,
It's available on YouTube.
and it was there on YouTube. I just found it. I didn't know anything about it, and I watched it. And one of my most favorite films. Man. It's really good. It also kind of, even though it's a documentary, there are people who kind of connect it with close up. It's kind of like a docu-fiction type thing, but it's still
Close
a
up,
great film.
Kiarostami's close up. Are you saying it's like that? Connected.
Like yeah, docu-fiction, right? It's a documentary, but it also has fictional elements in it, and but it's not the it's other than that I would not say there are much similarities between them. But I really like it, and I suggest anyone to watch it.
Nice.
Uh, but yeah, it's yeah. Other than that, I don't have anything to add. So I guess I'll end the live stream then.
Okay.
Okay then. Shit. And